Thanks, Jen. Welcome back. I'm here again with Dr. Libby Quinn. So I have done lots of interviews with Libby beforehand. So if you haven't listened to those ones, make sure you go back into the archives and check them out. We've talked about lots of different things, from disordered eating and body image and just lots of different topics. So it's a really interesting conversation always with Lib. But today what we're going to touch on, being the start of the school year, I think there's lots of kids who are going into new schools, new classrooms, with new teachers, new peers, and then also all of Lib and I have both got little preppies that have just gone into their first experience at school this year. And I've been really finding that G has been doing pretty well, but she went into a completely new school. She didn't know any of the kids. She didn't know any of the teachers. And she found the first week really challenging. Like there was, and I think more than anything, she was so tired because, you know, up until she started school, she was still having to sleep every day.
Yes,
so having to kind of like white knuckle her way to stay awake through that. And then would come home and just fall apart at the seams, like so emotional and just irrational. And, you know, I found that by about day 3 of school, there was meltdowns every morning about, you know, asshole things that I would ask her to do, like put on some socks, you know, just.
How dare you?
I know, so rude. So what I wanted to talk to you about today, Liv, was how can we help manage this transition for kids? Because obviously it is such a huge change for them. Like, to be honest, for me, having to go into a completely new space with 40 people who I don't know and a completely new structure and actually having to do things in a certain way, having to wear shoes, you know, all of the things.
Foot prisons.
My worst nightmare. So I can completely understand how she is feeling about it. And, you know, she's taking it like a trooper now. But, yeah, what are some ways that you can suggest for people who do have kids that are still really struggling with that transition? So whether they're having meltdowns before school or after school or just really super clingy at drop-off and things like that.
Yeah. And I think, it's like what you're outlining, it's a huge adjustment. And I think it really starts with us as parents in terms of, you know, if you think about it, we are their secure base. We've been their anchor. We've been their, you know, regardless of how we might feel at times, we have been their sense of stability. And so we need to have our minds pretty clear in terms of having a realistic mindset around exactly what you're outlining there, what we're expecting of them in terms of if they're going from previously having naps to now not having naps. They're in a completely new environment. They're needing to socialize, to learn how to join in with other kids. They're needing to listen to this whole new person, a new teacher. Their days are probably more structured. There's a lot less movement, less outside play. So there's all these changes that have just happened like that. And so we as parents, I think we need to start with having a realistic perspective of almost taking a step back. And having empathy for what they're going through, essentially, to just be able to go, wow, okay, this is asking a lot of them in lots of different ways, cognitively, emotionally, physically. And exactly what you're saying, put yourself in those shoes. You know, if we were to go into a completely new work environment, ask more hours of ourselves, all of these different requirements, we would struggle with that. We would be having tantrums. We would be having little meltdowns. We would be refusing certain foods. Like it's all very normal in some respects, under the guise of what we say is just what we would expect with adjustment. So sometimes I think we can get a little too idealistic, a little too perfectionistic about, oh, my child should be slotting into this really easily, or, you know, little Johnny over there is not crying, but my child is. Of course they are. Like, you know, if we think about what they've gone from to what we're now expecting of them, it's a big adjustment. So, it comes back to that point. Initially, I think we have to have a realistic mindset. We want to be engaging in buttloads of empathy for what we're asking of them. And then thirdly, just recognizing that they're in this initial adjustment period, which could go from 1 week to 6 weeks to 8 weeks. Like, it's going to be a period of time as they're navigating a new normal. for themselves. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, just having that awareness around the fact that, they've had to be on, probably what they consider their best behavior all day.
Yes.
And having to, keep up this level of structure and just not fall apart at the seams all day. And then they come to you and they can be complete assholes or completely fall apart. And you're like, what do you mean? You've kept your shit together all day now. And I think a lot of that is, they fall into, finally they're in their safe place and they can just be. But it can be super hard to manage those huge emotions that are having, especially when they're not having emotions like an adult. They seem irrational, like their emotions seem irrational because they're losing their shit over stupid stuff like being asked to put on socks because they have potentially an inability to actually communicate what it is they're
absolutely
and saying. So what are some things, and maybe it's questions, maybe it's activities, maybe it's I don't know, what is it that we can do with them to help them express how it is that they're feeling, if there is discomfort or if there's stress or anxiety or whatever is around this transition? How can we help them to identify what that is for them? Because potentially, do you think that having them have a bit more of an understanding about why they're feeling that way might help them manage it a little bit better?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's helpful to even have the conversation whether your child's showing the behaviors or not around it's really normal when we're going through a big adjustment like this, that life's been like this for you and now it looks like this. And any one of us, when life changes on a day-to-day basis like this, we might feel a bit more tired. There might be certain things that happen with other people at school that upset us, or we might have to concentrate more than we normally would. So I think it starts with almost kind of what we'd say is psychoeducation in a way around, obviously in kid-friendly language, but just that you're going through an adjustment and it's normal to feel all these different feelings. And I think a critical tool we can engage in as parents to help them is validating their emotions. So if they come home and you just simply ask them, do you want hummus and carrot sticks or do you want rice cakes for afternoon tea? And you're just met with a barrage of abuse. To be able to, that's when we've got to engage our cognitive conscious thinking mind to not let our mind go into that primal reactive limbic state of us getting really emotional in response, because that's obviously just going to derail things further. But keeping ourselves in check to be able to go, okay, they're tired. They've probably had shit go down today. There's a lot that's happened that they've been keeping together and now they're letting out. And to be able to say, I can see you've had a big day, or I can see you might be feeling a bit tired, or I can see you're a bit frustrated. And by us doing that, we're giving language to what they might be feeling. And sometimes it's just hedging a guess. But that can help to regulate their emotion. When they've got someone else saying, I see this has been hard for you, that can be hugely regulating for them to just go, you're catching my big emotion. Because exactly what you say, they're not going to say, hey, Mum, I've just been feeling really stressed and frustrated today. Generally, at 4.5 to 5.5, 6, there's not too many emotionally intelligent kids that are going to be saying that stuff. So it's our job to hedge a guess as to what they might be feeling and give them that language and validate it. And what that does is it regulates their emotion, but it also keeps us in this space of being empathic, which helps to keep everything down regulated. As soon as we're just like, but I just asked you, do you want carrot sticks or rice cakes? Like, what's that doing to them then? That's just escalating their already stressed response. Yeah.
And I think that's, part of the challenge too, isn't it? Because, as parents, we've either been at work all day or been cooking, cleaning, washing, doing all of the things. And you just think, seriously, just eat your fucking dinner. And they're just being completely irrational. And it's very, very easy to, I think, just blow up or lose shit and not go to that place of, okay, you're really struggling here. You just need a cuddle. Like, what's going on?
Yes.
What's going on?
Yeah, Absolutely. And yeah, exactly what you're saying there. It's being able to sometimes give them the language, validate it, keep us in a calm space, and then always connecting in some way. So if your little one, if you know that they feel best when they're held tight, if they want to cuddle, even if they might be trying to push you away, if you know that there's their favorite game there, that again, it can just distract them and it helps them to connect back in with you and with positive emotions as well. You know, I'm really big on what we do for ourselves as adults in terms of daily habits supporting our mental well-being. So, you know, like before work, ideally it's good to move or have our own little morning routines of what we're grateful for, or meditate, or having some kind of joy before we get into work mode. It's so essential for our kids to have that as well. So being able to have a check-in of, are they having positive activities before school? Usually with yourself, if it's a way to connect in and get that secure base established firstly, and then to do the same at the end of the day.
Yeah.
As a way to just help them regulate, because again, that's their anchor points as they're going through this kind of up and down waves of change. Really, they need to have those anchor points in there.
Yeah. So I think one of the challenges I found with that first week of school particularly, there was such a large amount of time between waking up at 5:30 and the drop off at school at, 9 o'clock. So there was a lot of time and space there for shit to be lost, for meltdown stuff, the uniform to go on, to come off, to go on, to come off. I'm not going to school. I don't want to go to school. Just all of that. There's such a big amount of time there.
Yes.
And I think it's really challenging, especially if your kid is an early riser like G.
Yes.
To know, what do we even do in that space? Like, I'm not going to take you to the park because then you're going to turn up to school exhausted. So what's the, what is it that we can do that's going to keep you feeling calm, but also distract you enough that you're not going to be taking your uniform off and losing your shit and telling me you're not going to school? So I think it's it's really challenging. So if you have got any tips around what
to do for those first few hours,
in terms of stuff that's going to be calming them. So what we started doing from the second week of school was we started doing Cosmic Kids Yoga. So I don't know if you've ever done that with the kids, but it's a YouTube channel. And it's awesome. It's like adventure-based yoga. So she tells a story that might be based on Frozen, or it might be based on Halloween, or it might be based on Cars or Toy Story, or just, something you see under the sea, whatever. And it moves the kids through movement, but they're also hearing a story. So they kind of feel like being allowed to watch TV, but they're actually incorporating movement and some sort of mindfulness in there. So that, I find that to be pretty useful. But have you got any other ideas about what people can do?
I think again it starts with us in terms of as best as we can, and I appreciate when your kids are really early risers, sometimes it's hard to even be up before that, but if we have our shit somewhat organized, then again it's keeping us in a calmer, more stable space. So if that is, everyone's different if they're doing the lunchbox pack the night before or that morning, but just getting that sorted so you're not in a stress space for the child risers, ideally, because they're going to want you. They're going to be wanting your attention, your connection. So anything that's going to be taking us away from that, if we can prevent that, like prevention's awesome. So if it takes rising an extra 15 minutes to go, I can get my coffee in quietly, I can pack your lunch, have your uniform there, we're sorted. It's laying the foundation of stability and calm ultimately. And I think even having a bit of a process in your mind of what's most ideal for our time frame. So I know they're going to chop and change about being in their school uniform. I know they're going to spill their breakfast on themselves, or, whatever it might be. So just saying, okay, school uniform's over there. It's on at the last minute. The bag is already in the car before they're up. Like, just whatever little processes are going to help you out to stay calm so you can be ready for them to have your attention as much as possible. And I'm painting like an ideal picture. I'm also a realist and acknowledging that, you know, things don't always go that way. But anything you can prevent that's going to take your attention away, do that before they're up, ultimately. And using forethought to think about your own child, their own processes, and what they might kick up their heels about, or what they might get annoyed about. So I'm big on, sometimes for children it helps to preempt things for certain children of, okay, we're going to school and this is what we're doing. Sometimes that doesn't help children. Like, they're just going to fixate on that, worry about it, and have tantrums about it. So chances are they know they're going to school that day. We don't have to harp on about it. We can just say, okay, you've got playtime with mummy right now. What do you want to play with? And again, like, that's the same for you and me, Shan. Like, I'm sure in an ideal world, I like to get up. I don't want to be thinking about work. I want to get up and go and have my free time, my playtime, where I'm just thinking about moving or listening to a podcast or an audiobook, where it's just being in that moment of enjoyment, really. And we need to give that to our kids, ultimately. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because I notice that G does get super frustrated because she wakes up so early. I will get up when she gets up, and, you know, I want to sit and actually drink my coffee while it's still hot. And she wants to, let's do this. I want to do a dance.
Yes.
For you. Can we go and play shop? I'm like, oh, okay. No, well, now I need to make breakfast. Well, okay, can I paint your nails? Well, I'm trying to make breakfast. So
yes.
No, actually. No, you can't. So yes, I think probably having things in place that allow that to happen, so that she can have that time where she actually feels like there is connection, and that
Yes, absolutely. And I'm totally aware of how getting up that bit earlier can be a total pain in the ass. But if 20 minutes on your own can save you a shit show of you trying to get stuff done, them wanting your attention, you're getting stressed, they're getting stressed, and then you've kind of both leaving for the day where you're like, well, that wasn't fun. You know, it can be prevented by waking an extra 20 minutes, having your coffee on your own, getting lunch sorted or whatever. So you're in this space that you're like, I'm ready. Paint my nails, let's play shops, whatever.
Absolutely. And I think what I need to do is probably get up an hour earlier and try and do my movement then.
Yeah.
Because I'm finding at the moment, between the ridiculousness that is school hours and work, I'm just not getting that movement in. And that, for me, is like my mental calm. It just helps to balance me. I need those endorphins of even just going for a 20-minute walk by myself.
Oh, absolutely.
I feel like I can be grounded and level-headed, and it makes me more patient and all these sorts of things, where at the moment I feel like I'm not getting that done. I'm not getting that time in. If I wait until nighttime when she's at bed, you know, in bed, and then say to John, I'm just going to go to the gym half an hour, I'm not going.
No, let's be real.
I'm 100,000,000% not going, because
I want to eat non-attendance.
I want to eat dinner, and I also want to be in bed at 8:30. So, you know,
it's not the question.
Yeah.
And that's a good point too, Shannon, just in terms of, like, it only takes, especially if we're used to that kind of release for ourselves psychologically and physically, a few days of that, we're really not in a good space. Like, our resources to deal with tiny humans and their big emotions and their big needs in this adjustment, we're in a terrible space to be showing up effectively for them, really. So exactly what you identify there. And it's something that I'm really big on, probably from my own life lessons more than anything, with having two tiny humans, is just, we have to take care of ourselves to take care of them 100%. And if their routine has shifted, that now they're at school or they're at preschool or daycare, or our work hours have increased, we need to step back and reassess and go, all right, got to set that alarm a little bit earlier so I can get that time for me. And it's phenomenal. Like, I'm sure you notice the difference, Shan, when you get that time to yourself, how G could be doing all kinds of weird shit, and you're like, oh yeah, no worries, mate. But if your cup isn't full and your resources are depleted, it's that kind of stuff that will potentially trigger you, or, you know, not put you in a calm space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good tips, Liv. Thank you. So one other thing I did want to talk about today was the concept of stress versus anxiety, or even just having feelings of being anxious versus having anxiety. Can you please walk us through what is the difference between all of those things? Because are they three different things? Stress, feeling anxious, and having anxiety. Are they different things, or are they all the same thing?
That is such a good question. And I think what gets a bit tricky, firstly, is that sometimes we all might use those terms interchangeably to describe the same thing. Or different people might, what someone's calling stress, someone else might call anxiety. So it's just acknowledging that we all might have different definitions of these things. So what someone else might say is, I'm really stressed. You might go, oh shit, no, I'm actually anxious. That's how I would describe anxiety. So if we just come back to like the basic terminology of what they are clearly defined as, stress is simply our response to a situation, to a threat, or to many different factors overloading us. And so we will generally have, you know, a physiological response to that, you know, whether that's a fast heart rate, gastrointestinal upset, disturbed sleep, disturbed appetite. And it will also come with thoughts or cognitions around, I'm not coping, I'm feeling overwhelmed, this is feeling a bit much. The differentiating aspect between stress and anxiety is that once the threat has been mediated, so once a trigger, once we've moved through that, our response would disappear. So that's when we know it's stress. Whereas anxiety, the threat could disappear, but we're actually still going, oh my goodness, but what's going to happen next time, or what's next? We then become hypervigilant. So that's a key, discerning factor, is that, so say if we use, you know, what the kids are going through at school, they could all be potentially having some form of a stressful response at the moment, which again is probably within the realms of normal, within adjustment. Some maybe, again, on a longer continuum, some more stressed than others. But after a few weeks, if that was just solely stress, I would expect that their physiological response, the worrisome thoughts, they would disappear, because they would have been adjusted to the situation. If that child was experiencing anxiety, they've gone through this adjustment of, been going to school, I'm desensitized to it, but I'm still worried. I'm still having these worrisome thoughts about what's going to happen tomorrow, and I don't want to go. And so that, does that make sense to you? Just that it's like, once the threat's gone, stress we would expect to disappear, but anxiety still persists.
Yeah,
really.
Absolutely. So in terms of management of those things, what would your suggestions be around them?
The way we would kind of tend to treat them can be pretty similar, because, and this is where it gets confusing, because there's a lot of shared similarities in physiological and cognitive responses. So a lot of it is around, you know, validating whatever emotional response a person might be having, really engaging in lots of soothing behavior. So enjoyable activities, any kind of mindfulness or yoga. And then also it's about the cognitive aspect, about helping to reframe what's going on. So in a stressful response, if someone's having that, it's being able to validate that and go, yep, I can see you're overwhelmed. I can see it's really big. This is what happens when we're going through change and adjustment. And the more we do it, and the more we keep doing activities that fill us up and look after us, the more we're going to adjust to this quicker. And for someone having an anxious response, it's still doing all of those behaviors, but it's helping that person to reframe the experience. So potentially they're having the thoughts around like catastrophic thinking, this is really bad, or something bad's going to happen. And it's helping them to do some kind of like reality testing in a way. So to be able to go, okay, you went to school yesterday, and I acknowledge that little Johnny said this to you and that wasn't great, but what were some of the other good things in your day? You were able to sit there and eat your lunch and you enjoyed getting that sticker from the teacher or whatever it might be. So the interesting thing about anxiety or depression really is we develop a really strong cognitive bias where if we're depressed, we focused on what's wrong and what's terrible, and we amplify that in our experience. And with anxiety, we focus on what could go wrong and amplify that in the experience. So particularly with children, we're wanting to help move them back to a space of being objective and view the whole experience. And, sometimes we can use the analogy of saying like, okay, put on a different pair of glasses and what's the good stuff you saw in your day? Or, building that resilience to say each day we're doing this, you're, building up your toolkit of feeling stronger to be able to cope with all of that. But I would say if you're concerned about your child or yourself or someone else experiencing anxiety, and so again, coming back to that definition of anxiety is when your response is persisting past the point that threat has now disappeared, then seek help. Like, this is not the kind of stuff that we can really do on our own, if that makes sense. Like, it helps to have a professional in your corner.
Yeah. So, okay. So help me to understand.
Now, this is all right.
Just,
we've got
just
10
help me.
minutes of therapy for Shan. Let's go. What do you got?
Just help me. So, okay. So help me to understand, because I would say that I am the sort of person who is a worrier. Like, I worry about things, and probably always have been, but since becoming a mum, definitely next level worrying. And I know a lot of the things that I worry about are irrational. So, we'll wake up in the middle of the night. What if the house burns down? Where is the closest smoke alarms? Okay, so if G's door is closed and she's in her room, is there a smoke alarm? Is she going to burn to death before the smoke gets the smoke alarm? And so I've actually put extra smoke alarms in her room in multiple places.
Just in case.
Just in case. If she's sleeping in our room on the floor, as she tends to do sometimes, if the fire's in our room, are we going to all get over the balcony? Okay, so, am I catastrophizing? Is this just normal worry? Like, I know that it's irrational, or I will worry about what if she got kidnapped, or what if, like, this is the shit that goes on in my head. I'm a worrier. I know that a lot of the stuff is probably irrational.
Yeah.
I don't know, would I say that's anxiety? Like, I know that there are certain things that I do feel anxious about, and there are certain things that I just worry about. Like, I just worry about shit. What is the difference? What is the difference between just being a worrier, someone who worries about things, and potentially catastrophizes, or having anxiety, and like, where's the line? That crossover? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
at what point do I need to go and get cognitive behavioural
therapy? Do you need help? Yeah. Well, no, it comes down
so
to
today probably would be a good day.
I know of someone. No, I think it comes down to the way we talk about it from a psychological perspective is it clinically significant? Like, is it impacting on your day-to-day functioning? So absolutely, we all have different cognitive biases. We all can be wired into, and it's functional. Let's face it, like, it's been there for some time that we are wired to look for what could go wrong as a way to protect ourselves. But understandably, in this day and age, there's no saber-toothed tigers just hanging around the corner out to get us. Instead, we are worrying about smoke detectors. So it's being able to, just acknowledge that if this is impacting, if you're worrying to the degree that it is significantly impacting on your sleep, if it's impacting your behaviors, that you might avoid things, or you might steer your child away from because you're like, oh, that's really scary, but it might be irrational. So if it's really impacting on your functioning, that's when we would say it's time to seek help. And the interesting thing is that when we're more stressed, if we're prone to worrisome or anxious thinking, more stress can precipitate, like it can, be a direct catalyst into tipping into anxiety if we've got that bias there. So that's why whether it's for yourself or people you might know. And it's definitely happened for me, like, gosh, beyond 10 times in my life probably, where I could meet criteria for an anxiety disorder easily because stress has tipped me over. My already kind of hypervigilant, worrisome thinking, it just takes certain stresses and that will tip me over into that. And that's the case for anyone if you've got that kind of cognitive pattern. So that's where it becomes really useful for us to be aware of how to manage our stress so it doesn't tip us over into that, as well as if we know we've got that cognitive style of catastrophizing, of black and white thinking, that kind of thing. That's where we go, well, it's helpful to do some work on that. And no, you don't necessarily have to go to a therapist to do that. There's some really great books you can read. But also you can just, it's as simple as trying to catch yourself doing it and going, okay, I'm engaging in that catastrophic thinking. Just as much as things might go wrong, what could go right in this situation? And let me look at it, all the evidence of the past, 150 billion nights I've had with G, and has there been any fire? No. Okay. So again, that's not going to be a quick fix, but what we're trying to do is rewire your brain, that the more our mind keeps going down this path of catastrophic thinking and we have that physiological response of, and then we check our child or we put in different things to reassure ourselves, we're just reinforcing that thought pattern that we need to worry about it. As opposed to if we can try and pause and go, hang on a second, let me look at all the evidence. Let me try and sit with this discomfort and not check on them and not do certain things. We're actually exposing ourselves to the discomfort and not reinforcing our brain that we have to keep going down the worrisome catastrophic thinking. Does that make sense to you? That difference?
That does make sense. So when can you book me in?
For you, I can do a special. But it's just, and it's been like the great thing about all of this, and it's how I approach therapy with my clients and, gosh, with anyone close in my life as well, is like, this is like part of the human condition. Like, it's all totally okay. We are wired to have a negative cognitive bias. We're wired to look out for threat. It's just acknowledging to what extent has my mind been in that habit, kind of like the habit of not eating enough vegetables or not moving enough or not drinking enough water, and that habit isn't helping me. So can I catch myself and look for the evidence of what's right, of how catastrophe hasn't struck us and we're okay, and sitting with the discomfort of not doing what we would say like reassurance checking, because reassurance checking brings us relief in the moment, but we've actually just reinforced the worry. And that's tricky, I think, to sit with the discomfort, because we're like, come on, I could go check and feel okay. Why am I going to lay awake for another 2 hours feeling this discomfort? But it helps desensitize us.
Yes.
To that.
Awesome. That was so good. Thank you, Liv. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
I'm sure we will do this again with another such topics. I think another one that would be really good to cover in the future would be around core beliefs and how that kind of shapes actions and behaviors and all that sort of stuff. And also I think as how that relates to our kids, because obviously they're creating core beliefs in this really, this time of their life where they're so impressionable. This is when they're creating all of those core beliefs for their being. So yes, that would be a good one to have a talk about.
Hello, Brown. Yes, absolutely. I think it's a big one, and it's an area of work like I'm super passionate about is, being able to be aware of our own core beliefs, how that's running the show for our own lives, but then also how that's affecting how we parent. We're parenting kind of from our core beliefs, and then also that third factor of, between the ages of 0 and 7, children are forming their own core beliefs, and we are so key in helping them to develop healthy core beliefs in that. So yes, let's do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Lib.
You are welcome, my dear.
Fabulous. Where can people find you?
Probably the best place is still on Instagram as The Women's Psychologist. I'm there. come say hello. I'm trying to, although it's been a bit slow of late, thanks to the whole adjusting to child in school business. But yeah, try to consistently put up some valuable content around how to look after ourselves.
And if people want to work with you, they can reach out via there.
Yes, by there. I'm pretty sure I've got my website link there if I'm up to date. But you can just Google.
There'll be some manner of contact in there.
Yes, you can find me there, or just Google the Women's Psychology Clinic and send me an email via that. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Liv.
Excellent. No worries.
Fabulous.